Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Popchak-Hakim with the Office of Forensic Mental Health Services.
And my name's Maureen Bailey, and I work for the Healthcare Authority. I am the Enhanced Peer Services Program Administrator.
And we'd like to welcome you today to the training, the intersection of behavioral health and the law. This is going to be very important for some of the peers. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
So certified peer counselors will be taking this training, required to take this training, who work on forensic PATH, forensic HARPS, and outpatient competency restoration teams as part of the True Blood Settlement Agreement.
All right, so Maureen is from the Washington State Healthcare Authority, more specifically the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery, and I am from the Department of Social and Health Services, more specifically the Office of Forensic Mental Health Services. And this presentation and training curriculum has been jointly created and will be jointly trained by both HCA and OFFM. So we just welcome you and appreciate the time that you'll be spending with us today in going through this training. So the first slide is primarily for the in-person training. So we'll just skip on to the next slide. And the goals for this training are we're going to provide education on topics related to working with adults with behavioral health conditions and involved with the criminal court system. And this will not be a two-day training, but would be a virtual overview of each one of the modules. And it will provide you with a greater ability to support individuals and provide an improved quality of service.
Mm-hmm. And so we also have a manual that you should have received by now, either virtually or in hardcover. So what will learn in this course, did you want to go over that?
Sure. So you can follow along in the manual, and this is module 1, and then we'll shortly here be on to module 2. So what will you learn overall in this course with all the modules? You'll learn about Washington's forensic mental health and criminal court system, the role of a certified peer counselor, commonly used acronyms and terms. Some of them you may have heard before, some of them maybe not. And in the manual, we've provided a fairly extensive glossary for you to refer to. So, if you ever want to dig deeper into a definition or term that you hear throughout the training, just hit the pause button and grab that glossary. We're going to talk about common behavioral health conditions, provide an introduction for those, some important rules and regulations. We're going to learn a little bit about diversion, competency evaluation and restoration services, and civil commitment, NGRI, some client-centered trauma-informed care, crisis de-escalation, suicide prevention, and the importance of transition planning and continuity of care. So that's what you'll learn in all the modules that we'll be delivering as part of this overview. So we're going to start out with module 2, forensic mental health system overview. And specifically in this module, Maureen's going to talk a little bit about the importance of language. We're going to identify some components of the forensic mental health system in Washington, and that's going to lay the groundwork for you. And that'll be kind of the initial building block, so you'll be able to kind of put it in your mind, what are the different pieces that we're talking about? And then we're going to break out some of the different roles that you're familiar with, and that'll help you kind of orient yourself to the system as we go further and further into different pieces and talk about it more intricately. Then we're going to learn about the True Blood lawsuit and its implications for the mental health system. So first off, we wanted to provide you with the definition. And the first definition is OFFM's broad definition of forensic services, because we talk a lot about forensic services, and it's a great place to start. So forensic services are those which occur at the intersection of law and psychology. Now, we provided a definition from the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors, and they describe forensic mental health services as services provided by mental health professionals or agencies for use in court or otherwise in connection with a legal matter. And generally, the services are ordered by the court in a criminal case.
So we wanted to start off this training and set some groundwork on how we identify people and the language that we use. Language is really important because it can promote dignity and empowerment. We can support a recovery-oriented approach if we use the right language, and using a person-centered approach to focus on the person, not on the condition. So we have a little chart here, but first of all, I want to talk a little bit about stigma. So stigma is defined as a negative set of unfair beliefs that a society or group hold of people have about something. So stigma can be from the society, but also can be internal. So we really want to kind of almost like flip the script of what has happened in the past to focus on a person and not their condition. So if we can look through here, we notice on the column, the darker column, it says focuses on condition. So let's just explore the Joe is homeless. We hear a lot in the community about, homeless individuals. We want to identify the person first. So we can say Joe is experiencing homelessness. Homelessness is not a permanent condition, it's a temporary condition. So it should not define an individual. So we want to define individuals by people first. There is another one we can look at down here. So it says Jack is a frequent flyer. So in a more strength-based way, we could say Jack continues looking to get his needs met. So we don't want to use the stigmatizing phrase of frequent flyer.
And Maureen and I talked a little bit about, we had the question posed to us, what if somebody wants to identify in that way? Joe is homeless, I am homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And the guidance there would be to always
ask the person. And so some people find strength in their disability. Some people say if they have a diagnosis of autism, they find strength in their community. So they might want to be referred to as an autistic person. So we always really want to check with the person on how they want to be identified. But best practice is to use person first language. Yes. And so we want to encourage that through the training. I am not perfect at it. So you might hear myself correcting myself through this training.
It's a nice way to put it in your head to think of the individual first. And we also had a question about the terms criminal court and criminal justice. You want to
Yes, so we're trying to use the term criminal court system instead of our criminal justice system. A lot of people who have been through the system do not find the system to be just. So we're trying to change our language around that as well and calling it a criminal court system.
And that kind of makes it a more neutral term.
So I just want, in the in-person training, we'll do an activity about this. But since this is a virtual training, I would just like you guys to take some time, whether it's now or later, to think about words that you have heard in the community that are more stigmatizing around people with behavioral health or intellectual disabilities. And then start thinking about better ways to say those things, more person first or strength-based ways to identify individuals. And so in developing this curriculum, we involved people with lived experience, certified peer counselors, and we asked for some quotes of their experiences when they were going through the system. And so one of our contributors, Terry Owen, a certified peer counselor, gave us a quote that says, "My experience with mental health court helped me change my perception and how I interact with the judicial system." And so we thought this was a very powerful way to start this training.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the True Blood settlement agreement. So True Blood is a class action lawsuit that challenged unconstitutional delays in competency evaluation and restoration services. And in order to talk about this, we need to kind of set the stage a little bit with some language and some definitions. So competency to stand trial is determined through a forensic competency evaluation. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So competency to stand trial has to do with an individual who has a mental health condition that prohibits their ability to consult with their attorney, to aid in their defense, and to understand the proceedings against them. So then we're going to talk about competency restoration services. So this is for individuals who may be able to attain competency to stand trial given the appropriate treatment. So the goal is to assist individuals in overcoming factors that limit their ability to understand the proceedings and aid their attorney in their defense. And another definition we want to talk about are class members. So class members are people who are now or will be charged with a crime in Washington and are waiting in jail after being ordered to receive competency evaluation or restoration services through DSHS.
So these definitions will kind of help you clarify the rest of the information about True Blood. We just didn't want to move into the discussion about True Blood without ensuring that these 3 points, just competency to stand trial, restoration services that occur after the determination of not being competent to stand trial, to try and restore that competency, and then who are the class members in this class action lawsuit?
So in 2015, the court ruled that there were unconstitutional rights of class members being violated. So the state ordered the court to provide court-ordered competency evaluations within 14 days and competency restoration services within 7 days. The state was unable to meet these requirements and ruled in contempt of court. In 2018, the parties came together to work together to come up with some solutions. And then there was a settlement agreement. And so this was a collaborative effort to reduce the number of class members and serve them timely and focus on effective outcomes for existing programs. So this was not a solution to the problem. This was a collaboration. This was not to cure itself, not to like end the settlement, but more cure itself from their contempt status.
The settlement agreement was for the state to be able to cure itself of the contempt status. So the lawsuit itself has not been settled. So we just wanted to bring that point.
And so in that settlement agreement, we have some elements that came up to help better serve the population. So if you want to change this slide. So the settlement elements are, number 1, they're going to increase state evaluators. Number 2, there's been some legislative changes for competency restoration. 3, establish outpatient competency restoration program services. And this is new, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the training. So, and then establish forensic navigators, which is a new position as well. Develop additional forensic beds at the state hospitals. We're going to ramp down Maple Lane and Yakima. And then crisis triage and diversion. So they're going to have additional beds and enhancements to those services.
You can see just with these 7 elements, these are some pretty exciting impacts that True Blood has kind of brought to the forefront.
And then there's 7 more. So there's crisis triage and diversion residential supports. There'll be enhanced mobile crisis and co-responder programs, and we'll go over that in a little bit. Increased crisis triage and diversion supports for intensive case management services. Expanded crisis intervention training. Education and technical assistance to jails and courts. The enhanced peer support training, which I am part of. And workforce development.
Which I am a part of. So these in addition, those are 14 very powerful elements, and you can just see from the content of those elements how big True Blood is for the state of Washington and how much impact it will have on the whole system in its entirety.
Mm-hmm. So True Blood is rolled out in a phased implementation. So phase 1 began in 2019 and goes through 2021. So it starts in the Spokane County region, the Pierce County region, and the Southwest Washington region. Phase 2 will begin in 2021 and will go to 2023 in the King County region. Phase 3 will begin in 2023 and go through 2025. And this is an opportunity to expand or modify the first 2 phases and look at integrating into new high referral regions.
So you can see this settlement agreement extends over a very long period of time with these 3 phases.
So this lawsuit, so DSHS and the plaintiffs joint proposal. So some of the money was used to fund programs that divert class members from the criminal court system. Then there was a True Blood Diversion Work Group, Plaintiff Independent Counsel, and representatives from DSHS and the federal court. A work group administered grant funding to local communities to develop diversion programs for class members. So you might hear in the community that there's True Blood programs, and they do help connect people to services using peer support. Some of them do. And then there's 12 diversion programs funded by the True Blood grant throughout Washington, programs that range from co-responder teams to programs that assist people in diverting out of jail and into community-based services.
Great. Thank you. So what agencies provide forensic behavioral services in Washington? What we wanted to do here is, kind of present to you HCA and DSHS and how we're working together and collaboratively in all of these different pieces. So I am with the DSHS Behavioral Health Administration Office of Forensic Mental Health Services, and these are a variety of the things that are provided from OFFMs. We have competency evaluation services, restoration services, NGRI services, liaison and diversion efforts, training and technical assistance. Mo talked a little bit about the jails piece, data management and resource allocation, quality monitoring and reporting. And so this is kind of a picture of what the system looks like. So DSHS is the bigger entity, then we have BHA, then we have OFFMs, and these are all the pieces that that we just talked about that reside within OFFMs. Go ahead.
And so I work for the Healthcare Authority, specifically the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery. And under the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery, there are several programs. So there's the Mental Health and Substance Use Disorder Treatment, Substance Use Disorder Prevention, Problem Gambling Treatment, Prevention and Outreach, Mental Health Promotion, Medication-Assisted Treatment, Emergency Services, and Behavioral Health Crisis Services. And the team that I am on is the Recovery Support Services team. And here again is a little diagram that shows, HCA and then DBHR and then the programs within DBHR.
So the forensic mental health system is comprised of the various entities that have a touch point to people who are involved with the criminal court system. For example, jails, courts, evaluation and treatment services, and corrections, and may have a behavioral health condition. Again, we just want to provide you with a definition to acclimate you to where we are. So now we move into some of the roles and some of the entities in the system. So jails have a big part with competency evaluations and that piece. So after arrest, an individual may remain in jail until arraigned on criminal charges. After arraignment, the next steps are established regarding legal proceedings, and the individual may be in jail until a plea agreement is entered, trial is set, and then adjudication. Some of the paths might be diversion, therapeutic court, divert prosecution. And if competency is in question, an evaluation may be ordered. And I would say that competency can be questioned at any time. There's not a specific point in time at which competency needs to be addressed. So jails work with forensic evaluators and DSHS to arrange timely competency evaluations. And that's in state law. We've provided the RCW, so if you want to go back and look anything up, you can do that. Evaluators will submit their clinical opinions to the courts. So in looking at courts, they also play a big role, and they have the orders for competency evaluations and restoration treatment. So within 24 hours of a court order, the court will provide the order and the charging documents, request for bail, and certification of probable cause to the processing team. After an arrest, prosecutors make decisions about whether to prosecute and how to prosecute. So that's where that diversion, therapeutic court, deferred prosecution kind of comes into play, with the goal of enforcing laws, ensuring justice, and protecting the community. The prosecuting attorney provides the discovery packet and statement of the defendant's criminal history to the state hospital in situations where that's applicable. So we've provided a little chart here just to kind of share with you and to help you better understand if you're if you have questions about these courts. So there's 3 basic courts in Washington: the Superior Court, District Court, Municipal Court. And as you can see, they each have different pieces that they're responsible for. For example, with a municipal court, they deal with violations of municipal ordinances. So in the top row, you can kind of see their purview. And then what does their jurisdiction look like? Some have general jurisdiction and some have limited jurisdiction. Again, with municipal court, they have misdemeanor, the limited jurisdiction with misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor and infractions, no civil. And then on the third line, just some information about, what can they do? What are the powers of those courts? So we thought this might help you better understand those individual courts and kind of what their roles are.
So designated crisis responders are individuals who evaluate people who are in acute signs of behavioral health distress. So they used to be called designated mental health professionals. So now that there are designated crisis responders. So designated crisis responders will intervene when a person is gravely disabled or poses a threat and significant harm to themselves or others, or is a danger to someone's property. So they may respond when assisted by an outpatient behavioral health treatment when they're needed. They often work within crisis response teams and co-responder teams. So Ricky's Law came about in legislation that was passed in 2016, and it has to do with parity with substance use disorder and mental health. So prior to that, people were able to be involuntarily committed for mental health reasons. Now with Ricky's Law, there's parity. So if somebody is needing to be involuntarily committed due to the same reasons as mental health, that can happen. So again, a designated crisis responder would come out and make that determination. So designated crisis responders, you can see in this little chart, in forms of involuntary treatment rights. So if somebody is going to be ITA'd, the designated crisis responder will read them the rights. They conduct interviews with people, their person, specifically their family and friends. And if appropriate for involuntary treatment, a petition is submitted to the court and the DCR works to find an available treatment bed. Prior to that, hopefully somebody will not go into involuntary treatment, and a less restrictive treatment options will be considered and determinations will be made as to meeting criteria for involuntary treatment. So hopefully somebody can be diverted to community behavioral health services before they go involuntarily committed. So if a person is detained to a facility, they may go to court after a 72-hour hold, and then the court will determine whether or not the person can be committed for up to 14 or more days.
All right, so forensic evaluators. Forensic evaluators are typically part of OFFM's employees. They conduct the competency to stand trial evaluations in addition to other forensic evaluations. Competency to stand trial is a big piece of what they do. Depending on the court order, evaluations can be in an inpatient setting, such as a state hospital, or other settings like the community, jail, or an attorney's office. If an evaluation is in the community, it's typically referred to as a personal recognizance evaluation because the individual is out on personal recognizance or PR. Forensic navigators. Forensic navigators are new to the system. They came out of the True Blood thing, and they just late in 2019 started hiring on forensic navigators. So this is pretty exciting stuff for us. And they're going to work to divert forensically involved defendants from jails and inpatient treatment options into community-based treatment options. So this is great, the kind of less restrictive option. And Mo talked earlier about the OCRP. So they'll be looking at folks that will be moving into OCRP services as an alternative. Navigators also assist the prosecuting and defense attorneys in court, understanding available treatment options. They're deemed impartial officers of the court, and they provide non-clinical recommendations to the court. So here's a little diagram, just so you can visually kind of put it in your head. We go from arrest, or we start from arrest, and then competency evaluation is ordered. And when that competency evaluation is ordered, a navigator is assigned and begins gathering information about the individual. Then, if the individual is found competent to stand trial, the navigator support ends. If they're found not competent to stand trial, the navigator may continue. And then the court will likely grant conditional release for purposes of OCRP and community-based behavioral health services. And then that's where the individual would go into OCRP, the outpatient competency restoration, which is another piece that is brought to us by True Blood and just recently has come together, and the healthcare authority oversees that piece. But we'll get more into that later. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. So the navigators, again, if a person's not competent to stand trial, a determination is made about appropriateness for OCRP, and there's a list of criteria there to look at. The navigator collects relevant information that may support the placement in OCRP or diversion and presents those non-clinical recommendations to court. The court will consider all the information and recommendations, and then we'll go from there. If they're appropriate for OCRP, they're offered those services, just as we saw in the diagram. If conditional release is granted, the navigators will help ensure compliance with the conditions of the release. So ensure that folks go to their appointments, that they're attending their classes, that for OCRP, because the whole point of OCRP is that competency restoration piece. So you've got to make sure that folks are getting to their classes, and adherence to medication, prescribed medication. And so navigators meet regularly with clients. They provide updates to the court, and they conduct regular check-ins after the person transitions to the community. So we talk about the warm handoff, and that's definitely the warm handoff there. The navigators will follow along with the person, make sure they're settled and acclimated into the community, which is really exciting, I think, really exciting piece. So navigators will connect the individual to those supportive services, housing, behavioral health services, SUDs, treatment, supported employment, case management. So they've got a huge piece on their plate.
Lots of warm handoffs in that department.
Oh, yeah.
So out of the True Blood settlement came the Forensic Path program. So Forensic Path is Forensic Projects for Assistance in Transitioning from Homelessness. So it is an intensive outreach and engagement for people who are at higher risk for involvement with our criminal court system. So the Forensic Path teams are going to be housed within community behavioral health agencies. They include certified peer counselors who have taken this training, and they will hopefully have experience working with people who are experiencing homelessness, and they themselves might have lived experience with our criminal court system. So certified peer counselors will build relationships with people and help connect them to their supports, including housing, transportation, and healthcare services. And another component that came out of the True Blood Settlement Agreement is the Forensic HARPS program. So there is also a traditional HARPS program, but the Forensic HARPS program helps people who are involved in our forensic mental health system. So the goal is to help participants to overcome the barriers and find and maintain housing. Services included in the Forensic HARPS program are peer support and subsidies for housing, such as application fees, security deposits, housing vouchers for up to a few months' rent, while they get help finding more permanent supportive housing, or whatever housing they want to find. Teams are staffed with people with lived experience with behavioral health challenges, and the staffing model helps foster engagement with people supported by Forensic HARPS. And so we pulled this out of an RCW, and the RCW is listed below, but we find it very important. So this says the legislature finds that persons with mental illness or developmental disabilities are more likely to be victimized by crime than to be perpetrators of crime. The legislature further finds that there are a small number of individuals who commit repeated violent acts against others while suffering from the effects of a mental illness and or developmental disability that both contributes to their criminal behavior and renders them legally incompetent to be held accountable for those behaviors. So it's just really important to keep in mind that people with behavioral health challenges are a lot less or more likely to be perpetrated upon than actually be perpetrators of a crime.
And we just wanted to quickly kind of present that piece to you as we were doing some research that was in RCW 1077 in the findings portion, and we thought, wow, that's
pretty powerful.
Yeah, pretty powerful. So we wanted to add that to the end of module 2 because this is the kind of the introduction of the system, and so we hope that you have enjoyed this module. I'm really excited about all the new pieces that were that came out of the True Blood contempt settlement, and I think that we have an exciting new horizon for us in with all these new pieces that are rolling out, and how much people are contributing to changing the system. It's a really exciting time. So that's all for module 2,
Yep.
and we will be back with you on
in
the rest
module
of the
3.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks.